We've got a very small crew here in person. Before we can get started, we need a couple volunteers to help us with the note taking. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? We're going to wait one more minute. Why is it doing that? Anyone, could anyone please help with the note taking? It'll be hard to get started.
I guess I can take notes, Nancy.
Who was that? Was that you, Aaron?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say either you and I can start taking notes, but I guess you and I can trade. 23. Okay. We should go ahead and get started. Do you want me to go through the chair slides, Aaron, or you want to?
Go for it. I'll be on note taker here.
I don't know, for some reason, I cannot hear you very well. I hear a lot of the background noise.
I can hear Aaron.
I think it's poor speaker placement in the room for where you're sitting.
Okay, Deb's closing the room, so maybe that'll improve things. All right. So did you want me to get us going? We can.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Elliot, for helping with the notes as well. So the more people, the better. That way, because I know, Elliot, you're presenting as well. So welcome to the SCIM working group. It's a small room, so I'm not going to say if you're not expecting to discuss SCIM, perhaps you shouldn't be in the room. What's that? Well, everybody could move up. Okay, next slide. It is Thursday, so hopefully by now, this is just a reminder of the note well, participation rules, and what you can expect. Next slide. So code of conduct, I mean, we're a fairly friendly group here, so I don't think we need to go through it point by point. Just remember, we are here to represent ourselves and to treat each other with professional courtesy. And as individuals here, come prepared to contribute and provide feedback for this working group. Next slide. Meeting tips, again, hopefully by now, for those in person, make sure you sign in so that we have the record in the data tracker. It helps us with meeting room size selection and whatnot. For those remote, make sure your audio and video is turned off so that we don't get any echoes or feedback, unless you're speaking, of course. Okay, so I decided to put just some of the materials and links here for how to get prepared, but let's just get to the agenda. So we have a somewhat fairly light agenda, although it's going to use up most of the hour. So we'll start with the update on the use cases. Dean, thank you for being online and for waking up in the middle of the night to give us the update on IPSI. And then Elliot, you can give us the update and what we can talk about it since Deb's here and what we can do as next steps for the draft. So agenda bash. Are you guys all right with the agenda? Going once, going twice. All right, Paulo. Give you the slide clicker.
Okay.
You have to click out.
Okay. So we finally start to have some reviewers. So right now, I think what we really need from the group is to have more reviewers on the document, right? So Dean and Elliot did a great job providing feedback, but it's really funny that the four persons that we have providing feedback and writing it are the ones in the agenda, right? Me, Pam, Dean, Elliot are the four. We need to have more contributions for this to go forward. I think all of us agree that we need to revamp the use cases that we have. And we are also bringing something that was very confusing for everyone, that is the terminology. I think that is important. Most of our conversations in the past, everyone was talking about different things because we don't have a terminology well defined. And that was something that changed from the previous conference, right? So after Dean reviewing all the terminology, he thought this is too confusing. So the RC, RU, RM, RS, RO, RA, at some point, everyone gets confused. So we start to change a little bit, and the data models, we change what we had as a resource object to SCIM resource object. The resource attributes, it's the SCIM resource object attribute, and that makes it a little bit easier to read the use cases, right? And we change all the documents there. We keep everything else. So if you still think that is confusing, because again, it's too many going back and forward between the resource object, attributes, creators, updaters, and make it hard to read. If there are more improvements that we can deliver there, we really need feedback, right? That means that we need more people to reviewing this. So then going through a couple of feedbacks that were given by Dean and were in the that we reflect in the document. So first, the references for ABFAB. So that was not there. It was added, including SAML. I was having a couple of problems with bringing SAML and the reference because we need authors, and SAML there are too many authors, so we might need some help there. Then the figure, the second figure, that there was a little bit of confusion on the that the RC, the resource creator, was creating the resource object and its attributes, and the update was only doing the creation. The updating, not the creation any longer. So we update that part. So now there is a couple of things that we need to discuss, and I need your help of the group to see how we need to figure it out, right? The first part is when we talk about the security event and the reference to the security events, as you saw before in the previous action. So we have a triggers that are the events itself, and then we have actions that are the two different models that were described in the event documents, the domain replication mode and the coordinated provision. According to Dean, and I kind to agree, it's not very well defined what are the actions that the events are bringing. So in here, I would need the help of the authors of the event draft that was proposed and getting a better description on how those actions can apply to the SCIM protocol, right? So I will need some reviewer from the authors to get a little bit more clarity on what the actions are. Okay? Anyone wants to provide feedback? I don't know if we have Phil. I don't think we have Phil remotely.
No,
Right?
but so speaking as an individual, not chair, so I can take a look at what you
Okay.
have on provide, and then Mike Kaiser is on the chat as well.
Mike
And he
is
said
also.
so
Okay.
he's also an author, and so we
Okay.
can help you with that.
So,
Yep.
okay, so the 3142, we need a better description on what are the actions that events can bring to the protocol, right? So now, the next point that was brought, it was about the single sign-on and the just-in-time provision. How can that be an action? And what is the value add that we can give there? I provide an example. Maybe it's not the best example, and we might need some help from someone else. An example where we have the provisioning of the user using the single sign-on with JIT, but because of the limitation of the URL that we can not have all the attributes, that was going to trigger then a SCIM action that is going to complement the attributes. And that was the example. Dean did not thought that that was enough to describe this kind of action where we have a conjunction of single sign-on JIT with the SCIM push after that with additional attributes. So we might need more feedback there and maybe better examples that exist in the real world that people that are using JIT and SCIM after, because this was since the beginning, this was in the use cases, and I assume that there are many implementations that use that. So we might need a better use case and a better description of the use case than the one that I gave. Okay. Next one is the actions documented. Again, goes back to the events. So the actions that are documented there, we go back to the topic 3154, and we need again some help from the authors, and we already have you, Nancy, and others that will bring the feedback there. Now, the next action is the one that is a little bit more, that requires a little bit more thinking and I think help from the group. So we already saw that there is two issues that was brought with this document. The first one was the single tenant and multi-tenant. And we had the discussion, I think it was in IETF 120, about that Pam was argue that from an implementer perspective, there are differences from the single and multi-tenant systems from a provisioning perspective, that a multi-tenant provision EIM, it's different from a single tenant EIM. And that's why we split it from the use case perspective. But in the end, both of them do the same. It's just that from a use case perspective and from an implementer perspective, we describe it different. And that was what we were proposing in IETF 120. So what Dean brought back is that saying that they are exactly the same. In the end, if you think about SCIM protocol, what happens is exactly the same. There are some implementers that will do it in a multi-tenant fashion and some others that will be a single tenant. So does it make sense to have two different separate use cases, or should we consolidate it in a single use case where we are just describing the use case of that specific action? And that is something that we need to have feedback, because in 120, we describe it as it is right now, and there was no much saying, and I think it was because it was very early stage. We didn't have many reviewers. It might make sense that we remove the separate use cases and we consolidate and we give, in the end, descriptions saying that we might have an implementation that is single tenant and an implementation that is multi-tenant. Most of them are multi-tenants, to be honest, right? And we need feedback there. Okay, good. So next one. Next one, it's about the examples of the RS. So the resource subscribers, we have some examples where they can act as a server and some examples where they can act as a client. Two different implementations that are bringing two different use cases. And right now we have it separately. So there is the use case, I don't remember what is the name, in the number, the 4.1 something, where the RS is a server and is providing and is receiving information from the client. And the other use cases where the RS, the resource subscriber, is also a client there. And in that case, it's a separate use case. Does it make sense to have it like that? Should we aggregate it, saying that, okay, so we have the resource subscriber, and he can act for this specific use case as a client, for that specific use case as a server? Again, it's something that was brought, and I think that we need to discuss as a group which one to use. And I think Elliot has some feedback. Elliot?
Yeah, this actually, I would be curious of other people, of other implementers' views on this, because when you have the server also acting as a client, right? Essentially, what that means is you have this chain of SCIM, servers somewhere in the background, right? And which is a great demonstration of SCIM scalability. But one issue we ran into was if you want to track, sometimes you're doing dispatch in this front-ended SCIM server, and it gets a little complex as to where, say, IDs are assigned or something like that, where you have read-only objects in particular from from the client perspective all the way out in wherever the client is, the first client, right? It's always going to see this read-only object and it'll be fine with that. But in the middle, during dispatch, some of those read-only objects are not as read-only as we would like them to be, I think. That we have to be really careful as to how those are assigned, because it could be that you really want, you have other dispatch activities going on where this middle SCIM server is actually having to assign IDs, and then later, right, you're using that ID in a SCIM server that's further downstream that hasn't seen it before. So there are some weird cases like that in that are mixed up in this case. Maybe I'm not making myself clear, but
No,
I'll stop there.
You are. And again, this is also part of the different use case that we are describing, right? Because one of the implementations is that a server is a server, a client is a client, and there is no interchange of the roles. And the resource subscriber is always a server, right? And then we can do it with pull or push the information. The other implementation that is also possible from the protocol perspective is that a server can also be a client. And both of the use cases are described. Now, which one to pick, I don't think it's up to the use case to define that. That is to the implementer to decide in the end which one they want to pick. But you are completely right. You brought another point that I think we discussed in IETF 118 or 19, I'm not quite sure, that is about the authority for the records, for the attributes, right? And SCIM does not define that authority and doesn't define mechanisms to say, I'm authority for this attribute of this object, or I'm authority for that attribute of that object, right? And that at some point we start to have the discussion is, does it make sense for us to define with authority and have to have mechanisms on that? And our conclusion is that that is an implementation decision. And for sure, I think in the use case, we need to make sure that we explain that it's an implementation decision and it's not a SCIM protocol that defines that, but it's something that an implementer needs to be aware. I fully agree with you. There might be very complicated scenarios that are going to bring exactly that. Okay, and this is something that I think, yes, we need to capture. We need to make sure that we document it. Now, is it our decision to say a resource subscriber needs to be always a server, or a resource subscriber can be a server and the client? And how do you do these scenarios where the attributes, and this brings us to the last point, right? Where you have attributes that are not managed by the client. A simple example of that, think about that we have an IDP or an IDM in the cloud, something like Okta or like Entra or like Google, and then you have an application that is an email service, and the application is the one that is in charge of a specific attributes for the user. But all the other attributes are handled by the IDM, right? So now you have a subscriber that is the application that has the email service that needs to know everything about Paulo, all his attributes, but he's the one that is going to create the email address. This is a scenario, and that's the last point, that is very common. And today, the approach of all the implementations are to use proprietary protocols. They use SCIM for the IDM to pass all the attributes to the application, but then the application, when it needs to provide the attributes and or be mandatory, and I'm really afraid of using this word, or authority for that attribute, they either do it manually or there is some proprietary protocols that REST APIs that are doing that in the back. I think this is the job of the SCIM, and this is in the SCIM specifications, so we need to make sure that we cover that use case. And all of these are open points that we need more reviewers and more feedback so that we can advance with this document. And to be honest, we have been presenting on this since IETF 117 or something. So it has been a very, very long while presenting on the same topic and not doing that much advance. So we need, either we decided this is useless, we don't need this, and what we have today is good enough for the implementers, or we really agree that we need terminology, we need use cases to guide better the implementers so that we don't have them going all over the place, doing whatever they want and having trouble in talking together. All of this started because I think it was in IETF 116 or 17. We were in the table in an extra meeting. We were talking together, all of us, and we could not even agree on what we were talking about because there isn't a terminology defined.
Well, I think part of the challenge here too is the use cases draft was supposed to document the combination, well, I shouldn't say combination, but the notion of the use cases that we need to work towards the update of the SCIM protocol. And so from that perspective, it really is the call to action on the vendors that are using SCIM to help ensure and review the draft that how they're implementing or how they need those use cases to be better described in this document. Right.
And I think terminology was something that appears after because we had to agree on how to describe
I
those
think that
use
was
cases.
the outcome of the discussion.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to look at the AD, but as chair, we could sort of push the need for the reviewers by doing a working group last call, but I don't know that your draft is mature enough for that. Right.
I think we need more reviewers.
Well, but what I'm saying is in order to force the issue of getting more reviewers is to do that.
So there's nothing to say you can't do more than one working group last call
Exactly.
too, right?
Right.
You could also request early reviews from directorates if there are directorates that make sense to do reviews for here. I don't know. I mean, you can do security, you could do sector review, but
I could do that. But I mean, so I'm looking at the list of attendees here. So I'm looking at, can we get reviewers from different vendors that are using SCIM to provide feedback?
And Dean is in the queue.
Dean
Oh,
is in
go
the
ahead,
queue.
Dean.
Hi. Nancy, Paulo, I'm not sure that this is ready for any early director reviews or working group last call. I really think the direction should be getting, like you said, Nancy, vendors who are using SCIM to review this and provide feedback. It's the document is is good work. It's just it needs more eyes on it and hands on it to massage it into shape at this point. As I said in my comments to the mailing list, the document is good, but it is a bit confusing to read and needs some help to sort of clarify some points before it really moves forward. So I would encourage any vendors in the room who are using SCIM to spend some time looking at this doc, reviewing the doc, and providing that feedback to Paolo and Pam.
Thanks for that feedback, Dean. So, sorry, I'm bopping back and forth between the notes and the attendees. So, I mean, can we have somebody from Okta? Can we have somebody? So we, on the
Google,
Cisco side,
Microsoft.
well, I'm just trying to look at who we have on the list of participants, right? There are people from AWS. We could get somebody from the Cisco side.
I think Anjali promised to review the last time and she did not deliver. I don't know if Anjali is in the panel.
Anjali, can you help be a reviewer?
So I would like to introduce Waqas Ahmed. So he's also joining from AWS and he's taking over SCIM. So I can work with him and maybe one of us can be reviewer for this.
Yeah, I mean, if you can help us find somebody in Amazon, I think would
Yes.
be valuable.
Yeah, I will confirm on the mailing list between me
Okay.
and Waqas, right?
That would be great. So not to pick on you, but I will. Mike Kaiser, can you help us or find somebody?
Yep, I'm on it. I was already doing the others, so I'll take it as a to-do.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Elliot.
I will also find somebody at Okta who can do a proper review.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay,
That will
so
be great. Yeah,
there's your answer.
thank you. Thank
Yep.
you very much.
That's it? All right,
Yep.
good. All right, Dean, you're up next. And I'm doing
All
a
right.
terrible job with the clock, but we have a 5-minute slot, so.
Okay.
I'm gonna try and keep you to 15 minutes, Dean. Yep.
Okay. It should be less than 15. All right. So good morning from the west coast of the U.S. It's early here, so I'm going to try and do this quickly. Wanted to give an update on the IPSI working group. If you are a believer in the IETF process, then you probably recognize that photos are important. And unlike Brian Campbell, I like food, not architecture. So had to bring some Spanish food in. Okay, so, oops. So what is the IPSI working group? So at IETF 122, Aaron presented at SCIM on the IPSI working group, which is interoperability profiling for secure identity in the enterprise. And the group is really designed to develop interop and security profiles of existing specifications. And this is to enable secure identity management within the enterprise. The group was chartered in OpenID Foundation in late 2024, and Aaron Parecki and I co-chair and are co-editors on existing drafts in the working group. So one of the questions we always get is, oh, so you're developing new standards. And no, XKCD 927 does not apply here. We are not trying to develop any new standards. Rather, what IPSI is trying to do is enhance interoperability with the existing standards that exist in the marketplace today or exist in standards bodies today. And so what this means is that we are going to do our best to develop nothing new within IPSI. But if we identify some missing functionality, we'll work with appropriate working groups, whether they're in OpenID Foundation or IETF, to advocate for a solution. So one of the examples we have recently is some work happening in IPSI required we need some new claims for ID tokens. And so that work is being developed within the OpenID Foundation's AB Connect working group rather than having IPSI try and do something on its own. And this is one of the reasons we're here talking about IPSI at SCIM, is because we are planning on doing a profile of SCIM within IPSI. And in order to do that, we need help from this working group. And we may actually come back to the working group at some point with a request for maybe some changes to the base specifications to enable new functionality. So what's new since the last time we came here and spoke to this group? The last time I believe we had started some work on the security outcomes known as IPSI levels on 2 different tracks. And so that's a session lifecycle, which you can roughly read as single sign-on, and the identity lifecycle, which you can roughly read as SCIM, though there may be other protocols there as well. Now, as you go up these life cycles from 1 to 2 to 3, you're getting additional security capabilities for compliance services. And you can find these at our GitHub repo, which is linked here. But I want to show just a quick screenshot of the IPSI levels and specifically highlight the identity lifecycle levels 1 through 3 and the obligations that are placed upon the application, also commonly known as the RP, and the identity services. These are commonly thought of as identity providers, but may not actually be a single IDP, but may represent a bunch of different services. So we right now at this state have not adopted a draft for SCIM into the OpenID into the IPSI working group, but we do have an OpenID Connect draft that's adopted by the working group. That work continues. There's some common requirements that have gone to a call for adoption, and I'm just waiting on that to close out this week. But those common requirements deal with things like TLS and use of cryptography, etc., that'll be spread across all of the IPSI profiles, including any profiles on SCIM. And here's the thing that everyone here in this room is waiting for is we do have a proposal for a interoperability or identity lifecycle level 1 draft. It is available in our GitHub repo, and we are likely to do a call for adoption within the working group soon, but we would love additional reviewers of this draft before we have a working group call for adoption.
So
there's some. Go
Dean,
ahead.
if I can pause you there. When you say working group call for adoption, that's in the OpenID?
In the OpenID, correct. It is
Okay.
not within the SCIM working group. Sorry,
Okay.
I recognize it gets a bit confusing, but what we're looking for here is a partnership between IPSI and SCIM to work together, and because there's a lot of cross-pollination between these groups. And so if there are folks here in the SCIM working group who can provide some time and energy to review the proposed IL1 SCIM draft, that would be fantastic, and we would love your help.
Okay, so my suggestion would be to post this on the SCIM mail list.
Okay.
and just say, hey, the OpenID Foundation is working on a SCIM profile, and whatever the title of the draft is, would love to have broader review and attention to it. And
Can do.
maybe you can, depending on how direct you want the feedback, right? Yep.
Okay. I can certainly do that a little bit later today or later this week
Okay.
and get that out. So with respect to SCIM, I think that's pretty much all of the information I have. Our work does continue on. We are working towards some interop events later this year or early next year. And here's a list of links within the doc in case you need to find our homepage, our repo, etc. And if you need to reach out to Aaron or I or both of us, you can email us at this email address here on the slide. And with that, I will take any Q&A.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes. Does anybody have questions? No Bueller today. Okay. I don't see
All right.
anybody. I don't see any hands raised. So,
Okay.
all right.
Well, thanks all.
Thank you for the update, Dean. That's good progress. All right. So next up, Elliot. Device models.
All right. So good, Nancy. You're sharing the slides. Excellent.
Yeah,
All right.
Aaron
So,
is. Yep.
oh, Aaron is. Thank you, Aaron.
Do you,
So Aaron,
do you want
I
to
will.
control them?
No, you go. Keep controlling if you don't mind.
Okay.
It'll simplify things. So if you can go to the next slide. Right. So a lot of check boxes here. We started writing a draft. We actually wrote a code. There's actually a number of implementations. I've just listed one of the OSS ones. We got this, draft adopted by the working group, and we updated it. We updated it. We got early review from the security directorate, which was really cool, and actually helped quite a lot. We went through working group last call, area reviews, AD reviews, IETF last call, and IESG review. And then Shelley noted a problem. Next slide. Okay, so it's not, I think, a major issue, but I thought it would be good to raise it with a working group. The issue, there are a couple of issues. First of all, we failed to include the actual group's object. As you would have for user, we didn't do that for device, and obviously we meant to. So we want to add a groups object for devices, and it will have roughly the same semantics as the group's object in users. Now, as part of that, there's a reference type that has a value of either a user or I think it can also be a group. Well, we need to update that to include user, group, or device. Now, mostly the text in RFC 7643 seems to be okay with this. In fact, there's an entire section that says how you add new resource types. Presumably they would allow for new reference types as well, but it's not very explicit. But as long as we take the EG to really mean exempli gratia and not this is how you code, we're all good. The problem with that is that the non-normative schema definitions enumerate values. And so that leads us to say, well, okay, and this is also true for canonical values. So next slide, please. So what we've done, right? Okay, we added the groups object. Okay, I want to just apologize to Shelley because I didn't understand the problem until she had to explain it 3 times, actually. So it finally got through my thick head that we need to we need to deal with that. Then we actually have to be able to say that a device can be a reference type. Now I'm not actually sure, and this is a question for the group. as to whether or not canonical values is ever expressed. If it's ever expressed, then, you know, that's one thing. If it's not ever expressed, we could just note that, yeah, canonical type for this can be, you know, a device as well. So we've updated the JSON and Open API schemas to reflect all of this. Also, we cleaned up small nits that we found. So the Open API examples didn't have Open API headers, which was sort of dumb. Somewhere we got it into our thick heads that we had to have nullable as an Open API attribute, but in fact, you can't have nullable as an Open API. It's not actually defined anywhere. So we removed that. And then Shelley pointed out that we had a capitalization error between external IDs. So we fixed that. Now that's not quite fixed in our open code, in our OSS code yet, but I will go back and look to make sure that it is in short order. And I see that one of the major coders has just bellied up to the bar here. So maybe I'll just pause and let Rohit make a comment.
Yeah, Rohit here. So this is regarding the canonical values comment that you had. I believe it's used in the group's resource. There is a type attribute, which can be one of the values from the canonical values, but I believe the text also says that it may be one of those values.
Right. So I mean, it's not as big a deal as the reference types. But the question is, does anybody actually, you know, in our code or in anybody's code, do people actually plop out canonical values somewhere in terms of doing discovery, which is, I think, the issue here. And I don't know that. So we can still update it. It's not that big a deal, but I wasn't sure if it was ever expressed. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are the questions. The most important one is, are we going to be creating any sort of interoperability concerns if we make this change to reference type, right? It's an existing attribute, right? And so if we make this change, do we have to, you know, does it cause an interoperability problem? B, do we have to update put an update 7643 label on the document? And these are like the sort of, you know, I worry more about the interoperability problem than I do about the updates tag, but the two are related. So, and then we also have this other attribute, which is endpoint app. And we could rinse and repeat and have groups for endpoint apps too. I haven't done that in my in my editor's copy yet, but I could, and I need feedback. And then finally, should we do like a mini last call for all of this? So with that, those are my questions. Let me stop and ask for people to answer them.
Well, Elliot, if you do another mini last call, we're resetting and it has to go, no? I'm looking at our esteemed AD.
You're not missing anything with this venue. The chairs don't slide on the carpet. It's driving me crazy. Anyway, so we can do a mini last call without putting it through the entire last process, the whole process again. So it's just a check because you've made a normative change to a draft. The things like this, I don't think, like we didn't draw any comments through the ISG on this, right? So we can do a short working group last call just to make sure that everything's squared away within the working group, and then we can release it. Because you've cleared all the discusses, right? You just need to up issue the draft.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering is, does it have to go through the whole?
No, it doesn't have to
Okay.
go through the whole thing again. We can just do a working, it's like if it was a bigger change, I could make you go through the whole thing again, but I don't think this is that big. Right? I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree, but I want to make absolutely sure, and this is like for everybody in the room and outside the room, I want to make sure that we're not introducing any sort of interoperability problem by and the issue. Let me be very clear as to what I mean. If we return a reference type, and reference types aren't all that, they're only returned in discovery. So if I go and I look up a group and it shows that the reference type is of type device and not of type user or group, will that break implementations? Right? That's my question, and I'd like people to check their implementations just to make sure, because, you know, I don't want to. If it is going to do something, we should have a longer conversation.
Right. So that little so you can up issue the draft. We could start the mini last call where you're basically asking implementers to verify that we're not breaking stuff with these changes. They're easy to see in the draft because, you can do a diff, right? So, and then you can make that last call as long or as short as you want. Depends on whether you think you'll get faster action with a 1 week last call or a faster action with a 2 week last call. Like,
I think it depends on when we issue it too.
it is,
given
it
holidays
does, it
and
does. Like,
stuff.
we're in the meeting, right? So
Right.
if you did it before the end of the meeting, I would make it a 2 week last call because people have to travel home, right?
Yep.
So if you waited to do it until next week, you could maybe get
Okay.
I mean, the question is who's here versus who's not here, right? If they're home watching remotely, then you can, like, there's no travel, right?
There's not that many remotely.
Okay, it's not that urgent. Everybody can get home.
I would propose you wait as long as you think you need to wait to make sure that you're all
Yeah.
squared away. There's no
Yeah.
rush. It's just done and it can sit, like other working groups let things sit after they've been through the ISG for a lot longer than this. Not that I recommend that, but it doesn't, there's no timeline. There's no deadline.
Yeah, that's exactly. From my perspective as an implementer, right? I'm not concerned about a week or 2 or 3 even.
Yeah.
I would be concerned about months, but I'm not concerned about a week or 2 or 3.
Right,
Yeah,
but
I
you
think
wa-
the question is making sure that there has been the review to
So
just
you
to
want,
get the
you want somebody
security.
to review it and act to the list saying that they've done it, right? So I think
Yeah.
what we want to
Good.
see is
Right.
an acknowledgement to the list saying that
Correct.
they have. Then I'm going to let the guy behind me who might actually be an implementer.
Paulo.
My question is more about, do we need to update 7643 or not with device? I think we are not addressing that, right? Because
Yeah. I mean, here's the issue on that. Thank you for bringing us back to that, Paolo. The schema in 7643 is non-normative, right? In terms of where it's enumerated, it's non-normative. So I'm not sure we should throw an updates header on something that's non-normative, but I do think, but there's a value to doing that too. If we stayed at the front of the devices draft, we updated 7643 because of this, just as in an abundance of caution, because there's this non-normative stuff in 7643 about that. That's about as far as I would go. Deb, sorry.
My concern right now is that you are creating a precedent. If we don't update 7643, you are creating a precedent to anything else that comes after, right?
Either way, we're creating a precedent. So, maybe we can follow a precedent here. Deb, do you have a comment there?
I do, because up issuing 7643 was in your charter when the charter was chartered a billion years ago and it hasn't been done. So there's a couple of things that are in the works that may make it easier or harder. I don't know. One is they're going to form a working group to take care of the JSON schema issues. Right? Yeah, exactly. Because that's a bit of a mess at the moment, right? So the art area, I think it's art. I don't know. Art, wit, something, not security, is taking on the work to handle JSON schema better because we're dancing around the JSON schema issues. So that is in the works, right? On the original charter, there was one work item was to update 7643. So,
That's correct.
we can work the timing of that as you want to. I have already said to the chairs, I'd like to rework the charter on this working group.
Yep.
Anyway, because you're working on a lot of stuff that's like the stuff that's like headlined in the charter.
It's around the charter.
Yeah, the stuff that's headlined in the charter doesn't not being worked on, which is updating 7643. So,
Right. Well, this was all predicated on us having the use cases to guide us on what changes we need
Yeah.
to make on
Yeah.
7643. But this is one that's being highlighted as something.
Right. But I
Yeah. So
think we can do
sorry.
this first and then do that, but as long as it doesn't get lost.
Okay, so all I'm talking about here, though, is whether we need to throw an updates header on this draft, because of this, because we're modifying what amounts to non-normative schema. And I could go either way. I really don't mind. I think in an abundance of caution, we might want to do it, but it's just for the non-normative.
Well, the thing is because it's non-normative, you can make the change and the reference in your draft.
Uh-huh.
And because it is non-normative, I think it's fine to leave it in your draft. And
Yeah.
then we can make clarifications when we get to the update of 7643 and make more distinct clarifications there as well.
Okay. Then what I think I'm taking from this is I will not throw an updates header on our draft. I'm just going to go ahead and push out the latest version with these changes. Now that just leaves the question about the endpoint app schema and whether we should allow groups for the endpoint app schema. And does anybody have any opinions about that? Now, as a reminder, the endpoint app schema enables applications to do things like access NIPSI. And if you think you're going to have application groups for this purpose, then having groups here would be helpful. Does anybody have a view on this? Because I think we might ask I could ask people over in ASDF if they have a view on this too.
Yeah. I think given the hour and some of the folks that are remote, Elliot, I would put it on the list to get confirmation as well.
Okay. So what I think I'm going to do is I'll do a short consultation with colleagues in the ASDF world, make a decision, and then publish the draft. Then we can push this out to we'll expose all this on the list. How does that sound?
I think that sounds fine. And then when you push out the new draft, do post a question on the interoperability.
You bet. That's like my numero uno.
And actually request an ACK from the vendors. Don't just leave it open-ended, right?
Yep. Okay.
Got it?
Got it. Thank you all.
No, thank you. Well, thank you, Shelley, sort of.
Yeah, no kidding. And I want to make sure that I credit her appropriately in the draft. I've contacted her about that.
I mean, I don't remember if you had an acknowledgements, but you can definitely give her attribution in the acknowledgements section.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Was that it?
That's it.
That's it. All right. Any other business? Let me look at the channel. Anybody have any other comments or things they want to raise? Going once? Oh.
Dimitri, yes.
Dimitri, yes.
Dmitry Zumsky. I have a question. It's probably like as newcomer, like I would really like to understand, like, is it like group mostly focused on enterprise use cases or also customer use cases?
Sorry, I heard enterprise and...
Enterprise or customer use cases also, like customer identity concept.
Customer, like consumer?
Yes, consumer identity.
That's a good question for the vendors.
And let's say I'm probably like from set of use cases and problems that I look in, it's, let's say, during acquisition or merging process, and we have, let's say, multiple customer identities. It's also kind of concept of cross-domain identity propagation and merging, and currently we have multiple bespoke solutions in this space.
Yeah.
Kind of like, is it problem even like looked somewhere? Is it like interest to work towards cross-domain exchange for consumer identity, or it's only enterprise identity?
Well, that goes to the use cases draft. So, Paulo.
Yeah. My question was that as long as it uses SCIM protocol, I think it doesn't matter, right? So it's about what are the use cases. And right now, one of the things that we've been asking for a very long while is that we capture a couple of use cases that are mainly enterprise use cases, but we glad to bring any use case that will be consumer identity We just don't know about them, right? To bring it to the use case. So if you can do contributions there to the draft, first read it, that is the important part, and then bringing additional use case that you think that makes sense by using the SCIM protocol, you are very welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to chair here and take notes and run the queue. We'll finish that. What's that? Yeah. Okay, so hopefully that answered your question, right? Have you read the SCIM draft? Well, the RFC. So if you see applicability and what Paolo is saying, you could contribute use cases to make sure that those get taken under consideration as well, right? Okay, any other questions? Going once, going twice. I give you 4 and a little bit more minutes and seconds back. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Elliot. Dmitry Izumsky. Oh, somebody got it.